All right, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Insider Trading with the one and only Michael Augello of the Hockey News and Off the Post Radio. Mike, thanks for taking the time to join us. Let's talk some Flyers and Buffalo potential trade rumors. You put out an article earlier today as part of your, I think, summer series.
Summer trade targets. I mean, I've been sort of like speculating about players that, sort of fit what the Sabres are looking for, who might be available with a number of different teams. And the name I mentioned today was Morgan Frost.
Yeah. And that's obviously, one of those names where if you say it around these parts, and Morgan Frost trade rumors it's kind of a hot name, it turns heads a little bit like, oh, Morgan Frost, you just had a really good year. Or you get the other side, Morgan Frost, oh yeah, we're finally going to trade him. And Buffalo and Philadelphia have been rumored, at least talking potentially trades for at least since the trade deadline when we last had you on the show. So there could be some smoke here. There's definitely some connections, and hopefully everyone that's watching the show now or that will be on the show has already read your article, and they kind of know, okay, Morgan Frost is a name, and the last time we talked, Peyton Krebs was a name potentially coming back the other way. But let's talk a little bit. Why would Morgan Frost be a fit for Buffalo, and why do you think there could be some smoke here?
Well, from the Buffalo perspective, they have top two centers in Tage Thompson and Dylan Cousins, but they had Casey Mittlestadt as their third line center, who occasionally moved up into the top six, playing on the wing, or moving Cousins to the wing and moving up to second line center. Well, they traded Casey Mittlestadt at the deadline for Bowen Byram, which I think was a good deal because Byram dramatically improves their blue line. But now I think they have a sort of a hole at third line center. I don't think Peyton Krebs, they may give him an opportunity, and they gave him an opportunity after the deadline to move up into that third line role, and he really didn't produce. They might give him more of a chance at that, but I don't know whether internally in the organization they believe Peyton Krebs can generate enough offense, even though he generated a lot of offense in the Western Hockey League, whether he can do that at the NHL level to the level that Mittelstadt did. And I think, Mittelstadt was leading the team in scoring when they traded him to Colorado in March. So I think they want to add more scoring. Their scoring declined by 50 goals from the previous year, and that was one of the reasons why they took a step back. They're going to have a new coach in Lindy Ruff, and I do think that Kevin Adams is looking for what I would say a middle six forward, either a top six winger or a center who can replace Mittelstadt on the third line.
I would say Morgan Frost would definitely fit that bill. So for Flyers fans, obviously, what could they potentially expect to come the other way? What would a Morgan Frost fetch? I think as hometown fans, obviously we always potentially, and I say potentially because I don't want to piss anybody off, overvalue our own players. Not that Morgan Frost is not a good player, because he is, but from a Buffalo perspective, what would a potential return look like for Philadelphia for Morgan Frost?
Well, it's all a question of what Danny Briere is looking for. I've been told now, from an outside perspective, you heard the word rebuild, but then the Flyers contended for a playoff spot, faded at the end of the year, missed out by a few points. But you kept hearing the word rebuild. So if they're looking for prospects and draft picks, the Sabres could accommodate them. They have 4 first-round picks over the last 3 drafts that are in their pipeline, and Isaac Rozan and Yuri Kulich and Matthew Savoy and Noah Ostlund, who are either got a cup of coffee in the NHL, played in the World Junior, played in Rochester. They're all in the pipeline, and they're all relatively close. If Philadelphia is looking for that, I'm sure that the Sabres would accommodate with one of those players, and maybe their first round pick at 11th overall. If they're looking for players on the roster, then Krebs is somebody that might factor in. I've heard, and from some of my Philadelphia writer friends, that there is interest in Krebs from the Flyers organization. And if you look at the type of player that Krebs is, the feisty, get under your skin type of player, that's typical Flyers. So I could see why the organization would be interested in him. I just don't know whether he can score regularly at the NHL level, but I think the Sabres can accommodate either one of the Flyers' particular desires. It's just a question of what Danny Briere would be looking for.
Okay. And I guess I have a question on Krebs, because I think the last time we spoke, I actually went back, or Krebs came up the last time we spoke, and I ended up going back, and I think I watched 3 to 5 games for Peyton Krebs. And I was looking for any sort of spark of, potential offensive ability. And I got to say, it was very few and far between, if at all. Do you think, you've watched a lot more of them than I have. Mm-hmm. Is it just a way that he's being told to play, or is that kind of just the player that he is? Because I'll be honest, I didn't watch much of him before Buffalo. I know that he was, a highly touted prospect, first-round pick, and dropped a little bit because of injury, I think. Is that just the sort of player that he is, or do you believe that there's some offensive ability somewhere in there, just needs the right opportunity?
Well, he was definitely put into a particular role. With Thompson, Cousins, and Mittlestadt ahead of him, and they wanted to play him at the NHL level, it was basically, you need to fill this fourth line center role. You need to be better defensively. You need to be more sandpapery. You need to do those things. And, from the first half of the season, he played with Kyle Oposo and Zemgus Girgensons, hardly Owen Tippett or Travis Konechny. So he did not exactly have offensive snipers to convert, but that wasn't his role. Now later in the year, after Mittlestadt was traded, he was moved up to the third line, and at the end of the season, he was playing with Jeff Skinner and Zach Benson. And he really didn't produce a lot at the end of the year. He had more opportunities, and I think he was, they basically said, try to up your offensive game, but he really did not produce a lot. And I think the tools are there, but when you've sort of pigeonholed a player in a particular role, and you have that player playing that role for 2 or 3 years, at a certain point, not to say his offensive skills have atrophied, but it's tough to get back to being that dynamic scorer when you're emphasizing another aspect of the game.
Totally, 100% understand where you're coming from. It's hard to snap your fingers and say, go play a little bit more offense now after having the same role for however long. So yeah, definitely, I would say Krebs is if I would be interested. He's sort of the, I don't want to say reclamation project, but he's a guy that you would want to get back as part of a package in a deal and say, okay, let's see if we can help him find his way offensively again, So that would be interesting. I think Krebs at least, sparks my interest a little bit. So the other player that Buffalo could have interest in is Scott Laughton. And he's sort of been connected to Buffalo in trade rumors for a little while now. This is a guy that maybe you mentioned in your article, Buffalo's looking for accountability players. Scott Laughton would fit that bill.
Yes, he does. And I think that they're looking for, they were pushed around a lot last year. The game, I think it was in early November when the Flyers visited Buffalo, where Garnet Hathaway broke Dylan Cousins' nose, because Dylan Cousins was trying to stir up something, because the team had been slumping, and he picked the wrong guy, and Hathaway cranked him right on the schnoz. You don't want Dylan Cousins or your skill players fighting. There really isn't an overly high level of toughness on the Sabres. They got pushed around a lot. And I think Lindy Ruff coming in and replacing Don Granato, Lindy Ruff is going to expect some not only defensive accountability but also team toughness. And I think their bottom six is going to need to be more sandpapery, and we know that Laughton can provide that. I think the issue with Laughton, as I think I said when we talked about him back in March, was his contract. He's a $3 million cap hit this year and next year. I don't think that's ridiculously out of line, but I think it is something that is a little pricey for what the Sabres are looking for. Now, they have a lot of players on entry-level contracts, but guys like J.J. Peterka and Jack Quinn, their contracts, their entry-level contracts expire at the end of next season. And they're going to be in store for big raises. So I don't think for next year, I don't think it's an issue for a $3 million cap hit, but the following year, I think it would be an issue. And I believe Bowen Byram would be up. I'm pretty sure he's up for a contract after next season as well, and they're going to have to pay him. The one thing about Frost, he's in the second year of a 2-year bridge deal. He's 2 years away from being an unrestricted free agent. So the $2.1 million cap hit, that fits nicely in the Sabres cap situation. And then you're 1 year away from him being an unrestricted free agent. He's an arbitration eligible. At that point you could trade him. I don't think the Sabres want to make long-term commitments. The guys that they're willing to commit to are the guys internally that they have on their roster. I don't think they want to bring in somebody with a lot of term or a big cap hit. They like their own guys, and I think they're going to be wanting to pay those guys and not somebody who comes in from the outside.
That certainly makes a lot of sense. I had forgotten that Buffalo hired Lindy Ruff. What was kind of the vibe around that hire? For me, that was unexpected. But in your eyes, was that a good hire for Buffalo?
Well, it's a nostalgic hire. Now, I think the positive was that Lindy has not been out of the game for long. He was just let go by New Jersey late in the season. He was on an extension with the Devils, so he would have been I think it was a 2-year contract with the Devils. And so he could have sat back and just said, I'll collect my money and that's it. But, 64 years old, I think he wants to keep his hand in the game. He took a 2-year contract with the Sabres. He lives in the Buffalo area. It's sort of a perfect fit. Terry Pegula is somebody who, the owner of the Sabres, is somebody who is steeped in the history of the organization. And the funny thing is he and I believe Darcy Regier was the GM at the time. They were the ones who fired Lindy Ruff, and he did say that he regretted that. But now I think right now, clearly the organization was going in a direction that they didn't want to go in with Don Granato. I think Don Granato was well liked, but all the players after he had been let go were saying, we need to be more accountable. Now that could have just been a mantra that they were told by the general manager. Well, you guys are going to be accountable. Well, you really have no other choice after they've let the coach go. So, but it definitely was going to be somebody who was going to go in a different direction than Granato. He was more of a player's coach, more of a teaching coach. And Lindy Ruff, although I think he works better with young players or has done that later in his career better than he did earlier in his career, he's more of a hard-nosed driving guy, I think. And I think that's what this team needs right now.
I would agree. And, if they bring on a guy like Scott Laughton, that would kind of follow up that coaching move. And, we'll see if that's fit. If I could ask you, so I think it was a rumor maybe a month or so ago, Matthias Samuelsson's name came up. And obviously there's connections with the Flyers. His father played for the team. He was in player development with the Flyers for a number of years, I think up until before last season. Sister still works in the organization. We were trying to connect dots down here, and, a trade, it wasn't, who knows what it's going to be, but Joel Farabee's been, in the rumor mill down here. Obviously, he's from, I think he's from Syracuse, New York. Wondering if there's any sort of Matthias Samuelsson rumors floating around up there, and would the Sabres be open to moving him?
I mean, I've heard his name mentioned, but I know that he's well liked in the organization. I know that he is best buddies with Rasmus Dahlin. That's been a defensive pairing that has worked well together. And he signed to a very friendly contract, not big money, but, and he's more of a defensive defenseman. He's never going to win the Norris. He's never going to win a defensive scoring title. But his issue, and it's been ongoing throughout his career with the Sabres, has been durability. He blocks a lot of shots. He gets hurt. And he had I believe it was a shoulder injury this year that ended his season. I think it was in December. He missed more than half the season. I think the only factor here, it's hard for me to believe that the Sabres would trade him, but the one thing that the organization, I think after the Byram deal, recognized is that they're mostly left-handed. They have their top four defense, they're all lefties. Byram, Samuelsson, Owen Power, and Dahlin, all lefties. Now, I know Dahlin has played the right side at times. I know Byram has played the right side at times. But it's a lot of coaches want that left-right combo. If there was a movement there or a thought there of being able to trade him for a right-handed shot, then I could see that being a possibility. But I'm looking at the Flyers, and I don't see a fit there. I mean, we've heard rumors they're not going to trade for Rasmus Ristolainen again.
You're at my mind. I was thinking if I should ask that or not.
That's not happening. I mean, no.
You don't need a veteran guy on the right side?
Yeah, I knew.
Good in the playoffs.
Talk about durability problems.
Yeah, really.
I don't see them trading Jamie Drysdale, and Sanheim has played the right side, but he's a lefty too. So I don't think that there's a fit there. But I don't imagine that that Samuelsson is somebody that the Sabres are anxious to move.
For sure, and I think that's about what I expected. He would have been a guy that I think, a deal that maybe would have made more sense for the Flyers than would have made sense for the Sabres there. So,
right.
But I promised you 15, 20 minutes, Mike, and we're coming up on 18. Is there anything you want to mention that maybe we didn't touch on in the article that maybe Flyers or Sabres fans you think they should know?
Well, I'll just say this. I think the Sabres, I don't think they're going to make big splashes. I mean, they're set in goal with Luukkonen and Levi. I think they're fairly set with their top two centers and Cousins and Thompson. Alex Tuck, and they've got some young forwards who are coming up, and Peterka is really good and scored 28 goals this year. I think the only surprising thing might be, and there's been some chatter around possibly a buyout of Jeff Skinner, but that the Sabres have notoriously not bought out players or retained salary, and he's a $9 million cap hit for the next 3 years. So that would be a very steep price in terms of a buyout and in terms of cap ramifications, but they would save themselves some money and open up some cap space over the next 3 years by doing it. It's just a question of whether you think he's declining. His speed is declining. He's a smaller forward, whether he can still be effective for another couple years. He's got a no movement clause, so he can control where he wants to go. So buyout or keep him are probably the only two options. So they'll be an interesting team to watch over the next few weeks. I don't think they're going to be really big in free agency, but I think because they have so many young assets, and a lot of teams are looking maybe to shed salary for a first round pick or for a young prospect. the names I've been speculating on besides Laughton and besides Frost have been guys like Pavel Buchnevich from St. Louis or Tanner Jeannot, who might be traded by Tampa Bay because of their cap situation. So I think the Sabres want to get tougher and bigger, and they also, if they can, add somebody who can score. So that, I think, will be what you should be on the lookout for when it comes to the Sabres.
That's great stuff, Mike. And the Sabres are a team to watch. They were a team that I was, expecting to take a pretty big jump this year. But as I think maybe some Flyers fans should be paying attention to as well, you can have the skill, but it's sort of a mixture of things that you need to succeed, right?
Exactly.
So and that's sort of a prime example. You need the leadership, you need the toughness, and absolutely you need the skill. So great stuff, Mike. I want to thank you for taking the time to hang out. Obviously, I'm sure people are watching, they're already following you, but just in case, where can they find you on X, and where can they find your work?
I'm at the Hockey News for Sabres coverage. I'm also at hockeybuzz.com for Maple Leafs coverage, and I'm on X, or Twitter as you call it, at Mike in Buffalo.
Once again, thanks, Mike. And for all the viewers watching, one last time, give us a subscribe and a thumbs up. You can check out all of our shows, obviously on YouTube, or head over to hwhockey.net for all of our latest episodes and articles. Mike, thanks again. Hopefully we can do this again soon. I know we got some draft coming up. Are you heading up for? Actually, you're already up there. You going to the Combine?
I'm going to the Combine, and I am also heading to Vegas for the first time in my life. I've never been to Vegas, so I'm going to Vegas. And I'm not bringing my credit card or my checkbook, so I'll be in.
Good stuff, man. Hopefully, maybe I'll see you out there. That'd be awesome.
Okay, thanks.
All right, have a good night, Mike. We'll talk again soon. There he is, everyone, Mr. Michael Augello of Off the Post Radio and the Hockey News. Once again, thanks everyone for taking the time to hang out. We'll do this again tomorrow night. Jack will be here, and we'll provide a full hour episode. We'll be joined by Mr. Russ Cohen, a guy you might know, Mike. So everybody. Take care. Have a good night, and we'll talk soon.